right, I think we're live, Pop.
We're live now. All right.
We're live. So basically,
What are we going to talk about?
talk about Vietnam War, what it was like around that time, and how it was really. Um,
What the attitude in general was?
Attitude in general.
Well, we had those that were in favor of it and those that were against of it and those didn't give a shit.
Yeah. So let's first off start off with your name.
My name's Harold Koklanis.
All right. Um, Looking good over here.
At the time, I lived in Detroit, Michigan,
Goodness.
working as a blueprint boy basically for an engineering company. I was a trainee for being a salesman for custom production equipment.
And what year was that roughly?
1966.
1966. And how old were you?
April 66, I turned 20.
20.
On my 20th birthday, I enlisted in the Marine Corps.
Okay. Um, so what made you really want to join the Marine
I'd always
Corps?
planned on joining the Marine Corps. That's always been my plan. My dad was a Marine, and so I figured I'd have to be second generation of it.
Yeah. um, so I mean, I can only imagine Detroit in that time. It was probably,
It was hustling. It was everything was being made. Everything was, no, everyone had a job. Everybody was working. Everything was going top of the world, just about. Everything was grinding it out. And I got drafted in '66. I got my draft notice to report, and I went in and told them at the job. I told the engineering company. I said I got drafted. I'm going to be taking off now pretty soon, closing everything up here. I'm going to go enlist, and they say you don't need to do that. We can get you out of going to having to go in the service because we're working on the machine for Colt that built the M16.
oh wow.
So I could have got a deferment. And I said, no, I planned on joining the Marine Corps anyway. So this just hastened my time. And so Mr. Aspinwall was the president of the company, and he wished me well. And the guys had a little going away party for me, the engineering division, and I took off. Said goodbye to all my friends in Detroit and drove down to Illinois and uh, said goodbye to everybody there. I'd already had several of my friends join that were getting ready to go in service in the Army mostly, most of them were. Had one fellow, Chuck Parola, was getting out of the Marine Corps as I was going in, and I saw Chuck while I was there, and he was telling me about it. He got wounded in a firefight, got hit in the arm. This would have been in '66 but he got out in '66. He had joined earlier. He's a couple of years older than me. Joined the Marine Corps, and he wished me luck and patted me on the back and sent me on. And so I went through boot camp in San Diego. So I'm an ice cream Marine, and boot camp was 12 weeks then. It was the last 12-week boot camp. We can't change this so you won't hear the vacuum or not.
um, let's see if you can hear the vacuum real quick. I can imagine it's probably like, good. I mean, good. Like,
In between vacuumings.
yeah. Right. Um. All right. Can you continue, Pot?
Okay, forgot where I was. It was 1966. I was going through boot camp. Um, my I was home, of course, and small towns, Southern Illinois is a bunch of small towns. Everybody knows everybody else, or they know a cousin of them. So, and I went over to the draft office and told them that I enlisted. I showed them my papers, said I'm in the Marine Corps. I was leaving so and so date. I forgot what the date was, and they said, okay. So I went back home. I'd been in the Marine Corps for about a week, and deputy sheriff shows up at the door. This guy's name was Ovie Taylor. He and my mom went to school together. So mom answers the door and she says, "Well, hi, Ovie, what you doing here?" She says, "I come to see Harold Bruce." Says, "What's the matter?" Says, "Well, I've got to arrest him and take him over to the draft board." She said, "Well, Ovie said he's in the Marine Corps." He went over and told Evelyn, that was the woman that ran the draft board, that he went over and told her he was in the Marine Corps. Said Evelyn did it again. God damn it, she's always does that. She ignores it, and then we get an order to go pick him up. So anyway, they had coffee and talked a little while longer, and he went on his way. But I was, if I hadn't gone, I'd have been arrested and taken. Anyway,
Forcing you to go.
yeah. Well, that was common. A lot of guys didn't want to go. They would hide out. That was common. So, and
You're not scared like the rest of the guys.
no, no. I I've I don't know. I guess my dad gave me an appreciation for life, and he also gave me an appreciation for death. And you kind of got to always live to where you're always ready, because you don't know when it's going to come. So, and so I went to boot camp in San Diego. I had the yellow footprints. So this is an off and on thing. When the Marine Corps they get you on the bus, you'll see videos of it all over where they you pull up, they pick you up at the airport or the bus station or wherever they're getting you, and then they take you to the Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, and you get there in a bus, and the drill instructors come into the bus, and they start screaming at you then, and so everybody's got to get up, and then you run out and you stand in formation on the yellow footprints that were out on the driveway. And the whole time they're screaming at you about this and that, and they're calling you names and pukes and everything else. And then they march you from there into different areas where they're going to give you your haircut. You get a haircut along the way. They give you your clothes. That you come in. A lot of guys, their stuff was too big or too small for them, and it didn't make any difference because that's what you were going to get. And luckily, I got mine. It fit me pretty good. But they get pretty good at it, I guess, because those guys were doing this all day long, matching people up.
So was it no size of medium, large?
Yeah, they ask you what sizes you were, and they come as close as they could to it, I guess.
We're
And
small. We only have mediums left, so
yeah, you
good.
get medium, right? Yeah, but they always had plenty. That's one thing they always had that I noticed anyway. So anyway, then they get us and take us to a big room, and we got put off in platoons, and then we lived in Quonset huts. It's kind of like it's a tin half round building, and they put uh, bunk beds in it. And that's your home for the next 12 weeks. And have a company in each one of them. I guess there was, I don't know how many guys was in there. Probably two hooches per company. And anyway, I forgot about. I don't remember how many there was in each one at all. But they shaved your heads, and you all look alike. You got your utilities on, your greens, and you got to button it up to the top, and you're buttoned all the way down. You got your combat boots on, and that's the way you are for the next 12 weeks. And it was, and so you went through everything like that. You're private, You're not even a Marine Corps private yet because you haven't been indoctrinated into the Marine Corps. You're nothing, you know. And that's the way they treat you, like you're nothing. But you're learning something all the time. You're learning to operate under pressure because they're keeping you under pressure. That's part of their plan is to keep you under pressure all they can. Keep you as confused and disoriented as they can all the time. Because you find out whenever you get in a situation later in your Marine Corps life, there's a lot of times that you're going to be disoriented and not knowing what's going on and have to make the best of it. I think that's why they do it. Uh,
Or just unorganized, right?
well, no, it was organized. They were organized. We weren't.
Oh,
They were telling us what to do all the time. Everything you did, you were told to do by the drill instructors. All these guys are combat experienced Marines, infantry Marines, most of them, and so they kept you under pressure and disoriented, but directing you were the way you're supposed to be going all the time. That's the idea. Is that you've never experienced anything like they have, and they're trying to get you to where you can handle yourself as well as you can when that comes about. Okay. All that time they're teaching you something about the Marine Corps history. They're teaching that you have different classes you go to. It's just like school, but you go in formation and you go out, you stand in lines and you march to it, you know. And sometimes one of the things we did every day was before breakfast we had a 3 mile run and obstacle course we'd go through. Different platoons did different things, and we'd go through the obstacle course before breakfast. And it was a 3 mile run and obstacle course. You go over logs and swing on ropes and all that shit, and then they take you to breakfast. That was the way they loosened you up for the day. And a lot of guys, the 3 miles was tough on some of the guys when they first came in. And later, that's no problem at all. I mean, I always tell everybody one of the, that when we go to different obstacle courses because they're all over different ones all the time. And I always tell everyone when I came in, I could climb a vertical wall. They had 8 foot vertical walls. It was part of the obstacle courses. You had to get over it. Now you either use someone to step on to help get over it, or you just jumped up and caught the edge the best you could and scrabble over the top. But you had to get over that 8 foot wall, and it was just a vertical wall. Nothing else was nothing to help you. No nothing, and you did it. You know. Some,
pretty
yeah.
ridiculous.
Sometimes we have somebody get up on the top and they get their arm, and then when you got up there, you did the same thing. It just depends on how it works out, what you do. And but boot camp is an experience. That's what makes you the Marine. It tears you down and builds you back up again. That's what it's all about.
Is what it's all about.
So, and I had a problem with my feet when I first went in, and I got put off until I got arch supports. So I was there an extra week and a half or 2 weeks, but it caused me to get out of my platoon and went to a different one. And once I got my arch supports, had no problem at all. And I got that. So I had 2 different platoons I was in when I went through boot camp. Extended my 12 weeks to 14 weeks in boot camp. And then when I got out, by this time they had already reduced the boot camp to 8 weeks. They took it from 12 weeks. I was in the last 12-week platoon to 8 weeks after that. So the guys that were just coming in were in there for 8 weeks of boot camp. They changed the schedules. We had longer time at the rifle range. We had out of the 12 weeks, we had 2.5 weeks at the rifle range shooting M14 rifles, and the instructors were there. Again, all combat veterans, most of them snipers, and they trained you to shoot. I was laying there on a prone position with my M14. We were just doing formation, just doing a form. How are you going to lay when you shoot in the prone position? And I was laying down there, and I had my rifle up, and the drill instructor was walking around these guys are the ones that got to have their hats up and curl the brims and all that shit. No one else got to do that. And but they was walking along, and they uh, again they bring everything up, you know. And so he says, drill instructor's walking by out in front of me, and he says, "What the hell are you looking at?" You know, I said, the targets. You know, he says, "What are you doing? What you got both eyes open?" I said, "That's the way I shoot." But you know, to do it, he went over and slapped my rifle out of my position, and everything was screaming at me. And what the hell are you looking at? You eyeballing the area here and everything. I mean, it was pretty traumatic there for a second. But then he takes, and then I tell him that's the way I shoot. He said, "Why you shoot with both eyes open?" I said, "So I can see what I'm shooting at." And it was, you know, most people will squint down to one eye, and I squint my left eye a little bit, but mostly I got both eyes. Comes from shooting a lot of shotgun when I was younger, whenever I was growing up, because you want to get a better perspective of things. I think you need to shoot with both eyes open.
Yeah, they say it's way better to shoot with both eyes. You get your whole
It gets your orientation better.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, you learn things like this in boot camp. Then I'm not a real strong swimmer, and the pool was one of the challenges that you had to do. Now you're in full utilities again, and by this time you got a pack on too. Now sometimes they're full of sand because they wanted to wait for you. And I don't remember if I had sand in my pack or not when I went there to the pool part. But you're not going the length of the pool, you're going the width of the pool. But it was a big pool, and it was bigger than an Olympic pool. And you got down to the deep end, down there at the 15-foot end, and you jumped in, and you came out on the other side. And it was, I don't know how many feet it was, 20, 30 feet. It's much bigger than a regular pool. And I don't know how I made it. I think I walked across the bottom because I wasn't a very strong swimmer. But I come out gasping at the other side. You know, I was certainly glad to see that wall whenever I got there. I'll tell you that. And but I think you do it because you're doing it as a team, as a platoon, and you all go in at once. You know, and it's mass confusion. You know, and I'm not a strong swimmer, so this scared the shit out of me. You know, and but I made it, and I wasn't swimming as much as I was pulling myself on the other guys that were in front of me. So, but we made it, and I made it. Um, Another part of it was the when you train with a gas mask. You know, you go in with the gas mask on, and then they pop the pellet and they get the gas going. And you have to sing the Marine Corps hymn while you're in there. And while you're singing the Marine Corps hymn, they come and take your fucking gas mask off. So you're in there singing the Marine Corps hymn in tear gas, and that was it. Really, it's irritant. It's an eye irritant. It's an everything irritant because you get it in your throat and your ears and everything. It's itching and burning, and
So it just really just burns and
yeah, it burns and makes you cough a lot. I mean, you're messed.
dries everything out maybe.
Yeah, probably does. I mean, I don't remember in particular, but I remember when you're coming out of there, if you're lucky, it's a windy day. It wasn't windy, but you just went out there, and then you see, and the whole time you're doing this, you're doing it in a platoon form. There's 60 other guys with you, you know, and then they hand you your gas mask and tell you to get out of there. And there's just the doorways all there was to get out. And man, I'll tell you, that must have been a reinforced door because guys were hitting it on both sides and tearing each other up to get out the door. And but you just had to go through that. Had one Jewish guy complain. I remember he said they can't make me go into the gas chamber. Drill instructor said, "Tell me on the other side." He puts him in. He went through it all just like we did. He thought he was going to get out of it because he was Jewish in the gas chamber thing. And so he got his break. But anyway,
So they made him go. They'll say like, well,
oh, he went through with everybody else. There was no excuses for that. I mean, that's so what, you know,
yeah,
get over it.
yeah, we're all in it together.
Yeah, and so anyway, he went through. And that, when you get through with boot camp, now I'm talking about a 12-week boot camp. So we did some things probably that the 8-weekers didn't do, or they didn't do it as much or as well. Like they only spend a week at the rifle range. Well, we were there for 2.5. We were there a lot longer. Well, anyway, then we go ahead.
You keep going.
Huh?
Keep going.
Oh, keep going. Okay. Then I got into infantry training. That was next. After boot camp, you had a little graduation. You're moved down to Camp Pendleton at that point, which is right by us at San Diego. And it was up on Camp Pendleton, which is the big Marine Corps base, huge Marine Corps base. Been there since before World War II. And um, we went through infantry training there. That's where they're training you in with rifle and in infantry tactics. They're teaching you how to do an ambush, and they're teaching you. Mostly, they're getting you in shape again. The thing is constantly putting you in positions and in situations where you're getting in shape. We'd be at our base camp, and we plan. They tell you, okay, we're going to do training today on a mortar. So uh, they they get us up at 5 o'clock in the morning. We go through the mess hall, eat whatever you're going to do, and take off on a formation. And you march probably 10 or 12 miles, but you can probably, if you look straight in a good direction, you could see where you're going to train. But you took the way around where you were going up and down every hill out there until you could get to it. And they plan on, if they get you up at 5, you're on the road at 6, and they plan on getting you there about 11 o'clock. So you're going up and down hills until then, training, carrying all the stuff that you need for that training exercise. And if it was mortars that day, you got your regular pack on and everything, and then they give you like a mortar tube or a plate for the bottom of it, or they give you dummy mortar rounds that you had to carry. We moved just like an infantry group, an infantry company would do if we were going to do that. And so we get there, and then they train us in it. And they always had Meals on Wheels, where they come up with a deuce and a half, and they give you the food in a mess kit. You know those mess kits that I buy that I got like that?
Contain water and stuff.
No, it's the mess kit. I buy them. They got the knife, fork, and spoon kit. You put it in there like that, and you put some things over here and some other stuff over here. You got your knife, fork, and spoon. That's how you get fed. And
Yeah, I remember you bought one that had the original spoon.
had the spoon and everything in it. Yeah, I got 3 of them. That's the reason I keep them. They're everything you need. And so anyway, at the end of it, you clean it out the best you can. Then there's one of the 55-gallon garbage cans that are on top of a fire, and the water's boiling. And when you get done eating, you clean it out as best you can. Then you put it all on that handle, everything, and you dip it in that hot water. Cleans it, and then you put it back together again, and you go on. Then it's the same thing coming back. You got a different route, but you're going up and down all the hills to get back. You get back about 6, 7 o'clock that night. And
that's gonna be a little bit later now. I was gonna say, keep going, Pop.
Go ahead. Anyway, but infantry training was training you, and we trained with a lot of World War II stuff. We didn't train with M16s or M14s at this point. They were all being used by the guys in Vietnam, right? And so we used World War II stuff. The machine gun, the 30 caliber machine gun, similar to the one you had, it really had a smaller base to it. That was a base for a 50, I think. And like you bought the other day, okay, we had that. That one guy would carry his regular gear and an M1 Garand, and then he would get the tube, and the other guy would get the tripod, and another guy would carry some more parts to it, or carry extra belts of ammunition. Everyone carried extra belts. We didn't. There was no linked together belts they gave us. They gave each guy two ammo cans full of it to carry. So because they didn't want to have the bells laying around, and you needed to carry the weight like you would have to if you were going into a battle with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'd go that day. We'd go out and we'd set up for an ambush. We'd how the machine guns are placed and where to put them and the angles and everything that you need to do, just like you would if you were getting ready for an ambush.
Mm-hmm.
And then they train you. You had areas of fire and everything, and everything you set up for. You put your tripod down. You put the machine gun in position. You get it to where you're carrying a certain area. You put a stick in the ground here and a stick in the ground here, so you don't need to see everything, but you're spraying a certain area. If you lose contact with your target, you can just spray an area at that point, and that gives you an effective fire range for handling it. And then it gets all covered, and so the overlap is done. So anyway, they train you in all these tactics in infantry training. They teach you map reading, how to put a compass down and to be of the area where you're at, and you go by map coordinates on how to get to certain places. And that's where you get guys that go in different kind of counties sometimes because they have no fucking idea what they're doing. And but and Camp Pendleton is a big place. I don't know how many acres or what it was, but miles and miles of miles and miles, just hills and things scattered with Marine Corps training facilities in there. Um, but that was infantry training. You had to go through ITR, and that's when you got promoted if you were going to. Most of us made PFC. The one guy would make Lance Corporal, the pride of the platoon or something, wherever. And he'd make Lance Corporal. The rest of us make PFC. Then you get leave. You get a 30-day leave because you're done with boot camp and you're a Marine and you're made a Marine. You've made it. You've got the right to wear the emblem. You've got the right to get in the gab sessions with the other guys. You've seen it whenever we were at gun shows.
Mm-hmm.
At sometimes I had one guy that was there from Korea, a couple guys from Vietnam, a couple from Iraq. One guy was still active duty, but I had 7 or 8 guys standing there in front of my table talking for about 30 minutes or more about this bullshit. None of us served together, but we're all Marines. That's what it makes.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a brotherhood there of
Anybody
Marines.
Marines.
That's what it is. So, and that's one of the reasons I joined. I saw Dad have it, and but anyway, okay. Now I'm a Marine. Um, got a 30-day called leave. Then I got to my next station, which is Quantico. That's where I was going to be made a repair shop machinist. Different guys that go to, pardon?
You're a machinist?
I was a repair machinist. There's a difference. And I worked on things that were broke. A machinist might just make new parts. Um, anyway, I was going to be trained as a repair shop machinist at the 2161. That's the ordnance MOS, I believe. And I had to leave for 30 days, and I reported to Quantico, Virginia, um, in 30 days later. And you take a bus from the airport to Quantico or a cab, whatever you're going to do. I took a bus and dumps you off at the gate, and they're expecting you. You check in there, um, and then they send you down to your barracks. They tell you where it's at, and you walk down to where your barracks is at. And each barracks were 3 floors on each side. They were big brown brick buildings, and each one had squad bays in it. Like it was a big room, rectangular room like this, and in the center was administration, and on the other side was another like this, and it was squad bays. They had one squad bay here and one squad bay over here. This was your head, where you use the shower and the bathroom and everything like that was in the center. So, and but they were all 3 stories high, brown brick. Um, That was your home. You had bunk beds, and each one they had you lined out to where when you got there, you live out of your duffel bag, and you had a wall locker, and you had a lock already. That's been given to you already, and so you get your stuff stored, and then you could hit the rack. But they wanted you to make the bed and get everything ready to go. So when you got up the next morning, you uh, be able to go right, be able to make your bunk up, and then get in a formation. You went through formation. First time you went through it was going into the mess hall. Then once they got to where you weren't so fucked up and you knew what you were doing, then you could go to the mess hall and get in formation after it for the march to the school. School was down the road a mile or so, and they had the guy there to your platoon leader would march you down to the school, and in that building you would learn your welding, uh, learn your machine operation, different kinds of machines, how to read prints, all this, everything you needed to learn to be a repair shop machinist. That's what they did there for you. So then after that, I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, the Amtrak Battalion. Amphibious tractors. They're about 35 feet long, I think. They weigh about 5 tons, and they would hold a squad of men. I think it holds 10 or 12, maybe 15 men in there. And that was the amphibious tractor. You'd get on an LST, and then you would land. You'd come running. The LST would go, and they'd dump you off. And I did this one time in my Marine Corps history. I did it on my 21st birthday. So I'd been in a year at this point. I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and off the coast, I made a landing on a beach in North Carolina. You know, it was an active landing, so they had live fire exercise going on, and I got on the second one behind an E1. E1 Amtrak has a big plow on the front, and it goes through and plows for mines. Because in a real landing situation, there's mines out there to get you, and it has a big plow on the front. But it's also got a rocket stand, and the rocket line charges in it is that they got a 1 pound block of C4 every 2 feet, and it fires that rocket out. And when the rocket hits, that line charge is draped down there. Then they set it off, and that's how they clear the area for mines. In a real landing, you would have landmines out there. And that's what gets them, stops them from getting people. Secondary explosion. Well, anyway, and Amtrak's being in salt water all the time, everything on them breaks due to corrosion. And it was my job to get up and take the studs out that got broken while they were, if they had to change a starter or they had plugs to repair and all this kind of shit. Whenever they'd break something in there, I had to get up in there and get them out.
But that's a pain in the ass.
It's a
All the
shit
way.
job, really. It was, yeah.
You had to
And
go through that replacing his chain.
yeah, you get a little training with it like that, yeah.
Not fun.
And so that was, and but that was it at Amtrak. So anyway, I've been there a little while, and usually you form up, and you can tell whenever you start getting too many guys, they're getting ready to cut some orders for NOM. So they were cutting orders for different guys. And now all of them aren't repair machinists here. These are everybody else that it takes to do it, all the electronics guys and everything else. And so I saw a bunch of guys leaving too. They all got their orders for NOM. And I didn't get in the first batch. So I went to the CO, commanding officer, and told him that I wanted. Now we're back in the barracks again, where there's just administration, bathrooms and shit, and then administration office, and you know. And I went to see the CO. I said, I want my orders for Vietnam. I'm not, you know. And I ended up in front of the major, and they said, what do you want to go to Vietnam for? I said, I didn't I didn't join the Marine Corps to take broken studs out of Amtrak's. I want to, if I'm doing this, I want to do it in Vietnam. And he said, well, you're crazy. There's no reason you'd want to leave Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and go to Vietnam. So I took him at his word, and I still haven't gotten any orders yet. And I took him at his word, and I requested mass with him again. This is the first time was an informal kind of thing. Second time was he's there to report he wants to pick up orders to get to Vietnam as soon as he can, as soon as possible. And we had the same conversation. He said, you're not going anywhere, motherfucker. You're staying here. Just get used to it, So then I was telling someone my problem. And he said, man, you're not going high enough. I said, what am I going to do? Request mass with the commanding officer of the Camp Lejeune? He says, no, man. Said, you go to the priest. He said, he's got the power.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't realize that. So I go to Mainside, and I go to the church. The church is multi-denominational. It's everyone, Catholics, Christians, everybody goes up to
what's the Jewish one? They have the Jews.
They have a temple. Anyway, but they all go there, And I just went the same. That's all you do is you go talk to the priest or the pastor, whoever he is. Mine was a Methodist minister. He asked me, he says, why you want to go to Vietnam? I said, well, I didn't join the Marine Corps to sit in the States. I want to go where the action's at. And I said, my dad was in World War II. He's on Guadalcanal. Marine Corps did the whole deal. And I want to do the same thing. And he says, do you feel like you have any kind of mental disability that's causing you to want to do this? I said, no, sir, I'm not crazy. I'm a Marine, and I want to be like one. That's what it comes down to. And he says, well, let me think about it. And a week and a half later, I got orders. Report to, what was it? I can't remember what, Westpac. Get orders for Westpac. That's Vietnam. That's Western Pacific is what it is. I could have just as easily gone to Japan. But
is it the shoreline, or is it like more is it like the shoreline, or like a Vietnam, or like middle?
Where Westpac was located.
What kind of what?
Where was it located in Vietnam?
Oh, where I went?
Yeah.
Right in the middle. I was about 300 miles south of DMZ. I went to Air Base, Marble Mountain in Da Nang, right outside Da Nang. I flew in, but that's just the first stage of it. When you get your orders to go to a war zone, then you have to go through a staging battalion to train you for the nomenclature that they're going to be using in your particular war zone. Because it's different if you go into Iraq or you're going to Afghanistan, wherever you're going, Panama. They train you what to expect when you get there. And this is done at Camp Pendleton. And I was in a different part. The infantry training was done at a different part of the base. This staging battalion was done at the main side, because it was just the guys that were on their way to Nam was the only ones that were there. And my parents came out to visit me, my mom and dad and sister.
Vietnam?
No, at Camp Pendleton, staging battalion in Ocean.
If I show you a map, would you be able to point to where you were at?
Sure. Da Nang is usually, okay. They usually have Da Nang on here. Okay, there's Hue City, Quang Nai, right along in here. Right along in this area here. South of the DMZ.
So basically, he's in this area right here.
Now most of these maps have Da Nang on it. I couldn't see why.
Yeah, I don't know where Da Nang's at.
Those weren't major cities. that they got marked on that. That map's for a different purpose. Anyway, it was the largest air base in the I Corps. I forgot how many areas there are in Vietnam. They had it divided into three areas, I think. I Corps 2 and 3. 3 was down in Saigon area. The 2 was the Central Highlands, and then we were the top. We were up against the demilitarized zone, which is where all the shit was going on. That's where Khe Sanh was. That's the big in Hue City. So anyway, we're going through a staging battalion, and again, it's just orientation. You go through little classrooms, and they orientate you to what punji sticks are and what else to expect from different things.
Punji sticks.
Yeah, it's where they take bamboo and put them a little bit, dig a little hole, and when you was walking along, you'd step on them.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's sharpened bamboo, and sometimes they'd poison them, you know, put shit on them and stuff. And you go through a training a lot like they probably do for their training now, but for booby traps and everything. And you have a company formation that'll be going, you're going on a fake patrol, and you got to watch for tripwires, you got to watch for punchy sticks, you got to, all that stuff is set up out there to teach you how to spot them and what to do when you get to them. So,
What's one instance of trying to spot one? Like, what would they tell you to look for?
well, to look for things that were out of order. You know, they're hard to spot, but you know, that's the idea of them. If they make them look real natural, they get,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
no point in the trap.
so, but they make them where they're a way to spot them. These are little details that I don't remember much of. Like I said, when I was in Vietnam, I was finally made it to Air Wing, and I moved from the Air Wing motor pool where I was working on the trucks up to the flight line where we had a machine shop. Actually worked out of a machine shop, and the auxiliary jet engines. There was 14 air squadrons of helicopters around us. I think it was 14. But we had 53s, 46s, Hueys, which is the Huey gunships, and the 34s. That's the ones that we supported. Um, they didn't have any of the fixed wing stuff like the tilt rotors or any of that then. They had helicopters. And so anyway, but anyway, going back to training battalion before I went to Nam, I got had regular liberty every night. I got off on liberty because my parents were there, and they'd meet me. And one of the first things that I noticed, or that I didn't notice that my dad did, I stayed in the same building that Dad did in World War II when he was at Camp Pendleton at Oceanside. When he was coming, he was going to World War II, going into the battalion he was attached to. But I stayed in the same barracks. It was the first one in a line of 3 of them there, and he stayed in the first one. And that was that. And he'd been there. He was there in 1939.
Oh, wow, that's like almost 30 years.
Right. And well, they're still using them. They're probably still using them today. They built them good, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
So anyway, but I always thought that was cool.
Did you ever witness anybody encountering a tripwire or like standing on the
I never did
frequency?
patrols while I was in Vietnam. I was wing.
Yeah.
If I'd have been infantry, it would have been a different story. But now in the training we did, everybody did. They made sure everybody had all this happen, you know. And they teach you how to disarm a hand grenade, or sometimes they had mortar shells that wouldn't go off, and they'd show you how to disarm them to where if they were set up on a tripwire to go off, if you walk past them, they teach you how to stop them from blowing up. And it's usually something pretty simple, like, you know, you carry wire or something where you would or a piece of paper or a knife blade or anything, whatever you do, different things. They teach you what to unscrew, like the fuse that was hooked up to set go off if you went past it. But they train you to be ready for things that are going to happen to you when you're out there. 90% of the Marine Corps was infantry, I believe, and you're either that or you're in direct support of infantry. Um, I was air wing. I could have spent my whole time in the hangar. We had a big Quonset hangars like they do out here, and then I lived in hooches where we went back to the some of the guys had Quonset hut type things, but we had built out of 4x4s and corrugated tin, and they built these little things that were elevated off the ground about 2 or 3 feet, and in between each two there was a bunker that was built with sandbags, and you could get out of your bunker and out of your hooch and go out the door on either end and get into the bunker.
How big were the bunkers?
Oh, probably about the size of this room, but only about 5 foot tall.
It's about like a 20 by 20 maybe?
Yeah, probably pretty good size. It's pretty. You got to hold.
5 feet tall is pretty claustrophobic. A lot of people are probably bending over.
Well, yeah, you had to bend over to get in it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, You didn't spend time in there unless it was an attack, and so which we end up spending quite a bit of time in there.
Nick would probably Nick would probably still stand up straight in there.
No. No. But yeah, that was your life then, because I'd only been in country 2 weeks when I got hit. It happened about 3 or 4 in the morning, and I didn't know what was going on. I'd never been through anything like this, and all of a sudden there's bombs going off by you, and I learned later they were rockets. They were about 6 or 8 inch diameter steel tubes full of explosives that were about 6 feet long, and they were firing them in at you, and when they'd hit, they'd blow up, tear the shit out of everything around it. Well, one of the first rockets that hit the base hit the corner of my hooch. Like if it run that right there, the corner was my bunk was over on this side. The corner of the hooch was right there, and that's where the rocket landed.
Probably about 5, 6 feet away from you.
5 or 6 feet away, but it blew the whole corner off the hooch. Had a big hole down there, and that's when the shrapnel probably got me. And I ran out what was left of the door, and I ran over, and the rocket had caved the front of the bunker in, so I couldn't get in the bunker.
Oh, wow. Damn.
So I laid in the hole that the rocket made in the hot sand. I mean, the sand's still hot from the explosion. And I laid there until I got oriented well enough to know that I had a piece of shrapnel in my foot.
Was it like a pretty big piece of chunk?
I got it in that box there in my office. It's about that long. Yeah, yeah. They handed it to me, and they just pulled it out. I mean, they took but they then give you in shots and get it cleaned out good and drop a stitch or two in it and send you on your way. Mine was never an in-country injury, out of country. If a guy's got hit very bad at all, they send you to the Philippines, to a hospital, let you recuperate and do all that. And I never did get hit bad enough to do that.
Is it like the top of your foot? I mean, there's a lot of bones in your
bottom.
Oh, the bottom. So you probably. Oh yeah, you're sleeping, so you're in the air a little bit.
Yeah.
The bottom of your foot.
And they said it because it wasn't very deep, so it could have been a ricochet where when it hit something else first and then hit me. So.
Lucky.
Yeah. I've led a charmed life. I've always said I've led a charmed life. I had a beaver cleaver existence while I was growing up, a little town, and it was. I've never been lucky, so to speak. I didn't win a lot of raffles or anything, but I've always led a charmed life. So. Anyway, that was Nam. Um, Getting there and my welcoming committee. I got hit on August 28th. I got to country August 14th, and on August 29th was the night I got hit.
Not even there 2 weeks.
Yeah,
15 days later.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
That made you want to stay longer? Or?
Get paid back.
it's what I expected. I was getting what I expected, and you scare the shit out of you all the time. But other than that, it's what you had to expect.
What a Marine would go through, right?
That's right. Well, anybody over there is going to go through, but I saw it as what a Marine will go through, what you have to go through. If you're lucky enough to be in a base that never got hit, so much the better for you. You're just lucky, I was never there, but some guys were. I mean, some guys. Um, but even Da Nang, the big air base at Da Nang, got hit with rockets. So there was nowhere that you were safe, so to speak, in Vietnam. So
What happened after that?
I was there. I was running the routine. I'd been there a couple months. We didn't have formations in the morning. That was the good part. They just wanted you there. I mean, you went from your barracks over. If you wanted breakfast, go have breakfast or a cup of coffee or whatever you wanted. But you had to be there by about 8 o'clock doing your job. And so that's what I did. One morning we had a formation, which we never had a formation. As they had us out there on the flight line in front of the hang. We were in big hangars, and so we go out in our formation, and it's whenever they have important announcements. They never had another one, and but they said they needed volunteers to fly with the 14 squadrons that we were supporting as gunners on the helicopters. All helicopters had guns of some sort, and if they were in a 53, it was transportation of material and troops usually, and they had a big 50 caliber because they could handle it on that. And but they all had a machine gunner on them. It just depended on what you were going to do. And I got assigned to 34s, UH-34. They flew resupply and medevac. So that's what I did. I volunteered. My good buddy Fred Chrisman, he's the guy that joined the Army. Fred was in the Marine Corps a year longer than me, and he served it in Vietnam. He signed up for an extension if they'd retrain him to be a Huey gunship crew chief. And that training took 2 weeks, and he's back in Vietnam again, flying as a crew chief. He had his own bird, and so
He's the one flying it, or just in charge?
uh, he was the crew chief. You have that pilot, co-pilot, crew chief. That bird is his. He takes care of all the maintenance on it and make sure everything's done right. And then they had me that come in, who showed up that morning saying, I got the machine gun. And that was my responsibility. So, but the other part of his responsibility was being the crew chief. So he was with the bird. Sometimes you slept with it because you have maintenance to do on it and stuff. And what I always thought was best was uh, they have rocket pods. They have pods about this big around, about 6, 8 feet long, that are mounted on the skids, helicopter skids, what they land on. They don't have wheels. And they had one mounted under each skid. Then they had 3 machine guns on each skid that were fed. And that was his responsibility to make sure all that's going. So he was telling me about how they'd be in the middle of a mission, and the guns would jam or the rockets wouldn't go off, and he'd have to go out there and fiddle with them to get them going during the attack was going on, because one side would be shooting and the other side wouldn't, and he'd have to get out there and get them going again. So
That was pretty crazy. So
it was.
in the air.
Yeah, that's while you're in the air maneuvering and doing everything, and sometimes the guy'd fall out, I guess, every now and then. I don't know, but that's doing what you have to do. That's your job. You do it. Me as a gunner, I didn't have any of that responsibility. I was responsible for laying down a base of fire when you got to wherever you were going and helping with the wounded if they needed it on the door. If you weren't shooting, you were helping the door, fit the wounded in. Because it was just, there the crew chief, Navy corpsman, and me. Pilot and co-pilot, and these helicopters set up high. They were about 5 foot high up in the top. They flew on top of the rotary engine. You've seen the pictures in the model of that helicopter I got there. The rotary engine sits here, and the pilot and co-pilot sit here. And then behind it, in the tail section, was us. As much room as we had.
Pretty big.
Pretty good size, yeah. Excuse me. So. Okay. What now?
So were there any experiences you had flying the helicopter that were
First time I was ever in a helicopter in my entire life, we got shot down.
first time ever?
First time. We were flying to Quang Tri, and I got out, and it was, I don't remember what kind of mission it was. It was a resupply or some kind of thing. We were in a lot of document runs where you just had to take papers someplace too. And we had to take ranking officers to a place to do something. Well, I forgot we was going to Quang Tri anyway, and we flew too close to a mountain, and we got shot at, and it knocked our tail servo out. Mine had the big rotor on front, on top, and in the back there was a propeller going, stabilizing you. That's what kept you going the right direction. This one would keep the momentum, get you going up and down and forward, and this one here kept you from spinning around.
Yeah.
Okay, it knocked out the tail servo. It knocked the hydraulic lines back here, got severed by the bullets that hit it. And so we started doing auto rotations. If they don't get that under control, you just spin to where sometimes you even got thrown out. But you spin until they get you in control, and then you can maintain a forward airspeed with a certain amount of direction. You could control where you were going, but you're going really fast. And if they can get the helicopter in the right position, you can auto rotate and control it to a certain degree. You have a little bit of discretion as to where you're going to land. And we got shot down. We were lost the servo. We knew what was going on. We were just trying to hang on for dear life is what we were doing. And he maintained a control finally. Didn't take him long. And he was maintaining a control going in a circle, but he was controlling well, you weren't spinning around like this. He could have been doing that, but you maintain your one direction, but you're going 150 miles an hour. Had to do that to keep it from spinning around. And he had no other control but that. And when we hit, we were joking about it later. He said, "Man, did you notice?" He said, "I'm pilot of the year, man." Said, "That was a perfect 3-point landing. It was just 160 miles an hour." and, and I remember hitting the wall. Because where I'm, yeah, well, it was the back of where the motor was at. They were up on top, and I was back here on the left side. And when we hit, I got thrown forward, and on the other side of that was the engine, But I remember making that trip from what I was hanging on to back in the back, and when it hit, because you're going 150 miles an hour, then you're going 0, and you poof, throws you into the front of the bird, and I remember hitting that wall. I remember that like it was yesterday, and I never did anything harm to me that I know of, but it sure knocked the shit out of you. It's kind of like
Laying on your back or your face, or you don't even know how you really.
I hit it on my side, kind of hit me like this, and but I got up and shook it off, and they sent another helicopter in for us. I remember I had to take my gun and the boxes of ammo that I had out to the other bird when it got there, another 34, just like ours, and they took us back to Marble Mountain, and they didn't even go to the shack. The helicopter comes in, taxis down the line where the helicopters are sitting. We stopped in front of one, we unloaded everything, put it in the new bird, and we took back off again. We never even went into the chain shack area. And
Everyone was okay.
everything was okay. You weren't bleeding, and so you took off, loaded our stuff back up in there, and took off for Quang Tree again. Made it this time. So, yeah. But that was my first experience in a helicopter.
Did you ever have to go through any battles in the helicopter, like shooting?
Every time we went out, I always expected to have to go through a firefight, because we were emergency situation. We were like an ambulance. And if a patrol was out there and they were going along and they got ambushed, that's when they'd call for us, because some guys had gotten wounded. And depended on how many of them got wounded as to how many helicopters they called for. One time, I think there was like 4 helicopters called for, because it was a large movement, and a lot of guys got hit. I think that was, I don't want to guess about that, but anyway, it was a large operation going on, and we were the second one there, so we would have been high boy, and the other guy was down on the ground. And he went in first and got the shit shot out of him. That's what everyone's fresh down there then. And he made it out of there, and then we came in. We were high boy, and high boy got called in, and then the next high boy would come in behind us whenever we got done. And it was my job to see the flashes and try to get them to stop. That's it. Every time I went out, it was the same thing.
Did it stop or?
Well, sometimes. So, I mean, you're never 100%.
Are you shooting a 50 cal or 308?
I was shooting an M60 308.
308.
Yeah, and it doesn't have all the bipod and all that shit on it. It's an aircraft 60. Same mechanics, just
From
fed.
the side.
And but I shoot as long as I had to. But we had to, I was also responsible for helping the wounded getting in too. And if things died down, my first responsibility was the machine gun and stopping the fire, returning the fire. And but the second was to get the guys that were loading in, the wounded, getting them in and situated into the bird. And then the same way, whenever I'd shoot while I was down and we were taking fire. And then when we took off and got out of the area, my job was to help with the wounded. Make them as comfortable as you can, move them around, get the best you can for them.
Yeah.
So,
what was the craziest thing you seen out there?
hard telling. At Ashaw Valley, it was a joint operation. The Marine Corps had something going on in one spot, the Army had something going on in another. And that's where I got to see Army helicopters, 47s, I think they were, Chinooks. We came in late looking for where they needed us, kind of thing. And we got called right away. But the Army had taken, I don't understand how it was, that they were calling in those, the 47s were long helicopters, they had two propellers, one on each end. And they'd probably accompany them in. They'd hold a bunch of people. and they'd come in and one of them would get shot down and crash. Then they had the guy that was calling them in was telling them where to go, and he'd bring them in and stack another one on top of him. The crashes were landing on top of each other, and I couldn't imagine why they were doing that, because they were killing guys with the whirling blades and everything else that was going on. And then he called another one in, and it was in the same 100 feet. And they did that. I watched it happen twice, because we got called into another thing. They'd put out a panel, or they'd throw smoke where they'd call us. They're talking to the pilot at this time. They'd call us over to a certain area, and he'd have the coordinates, and we'd be flying over there right away. So that would be where they had some guys that gotten wounded, and so I left there right away at where we were at. But I knew it was in Ashaw Valley. I got that much out of the deal. Usually I didn't know where I was either, but because it was a joint operation, and I heard the pilots talking about it, and they were saying that that there was no reason for that. Whoever their controller was fucked up. So, and it caused death. So I mean, they killed people.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're losing enough of them as it is without doing it to ourselves. And but anyway, went down. The guy, and the one thing that they had to watch out for is that if they hear that they'd like to lure a helicopter into a false landing zone, so they got a chance to shoot it down, won't be able to get back up. So the guy was throwing a red smoke, and he had the panels out. So when we were coming into this clear field, he said he was okay. We're popping red smoke, and so you see a red smoke come jumping out of the jungle, But then you see another one over here, 200 yards off, and you think, then you had to coordinate. Said, okay, where are you? Kind of thing, because they wanted us to go into their zone where they could shoot us down. And that was another thing you had to kind of worry about when you're up there.
Oh,
We had
wow.
good pilots. We're well trained, and the guys, we never did do that, but it could have happened pretty easily.
How many times was your helicopter shot down?
Twice.
Twice.
Yeah.
So,
The other time was just a standard medevac. We were south of Da Nang, I remember, and we stayed there too long. When we got there, they hadn't had 50 caliber shooting yet, and once we landed, the 50 cals opened up, and what was a little, I'd had 50 shooting at me before, but never green tracers. It had green tracers, and I couldn't imagine what the fuck that was they were throwing at us. I mean, it was green, bright fluorescent green practically, and it was tracers. I could see them coming through the fuselage and everything, and but that was 50 cal. And they waited till us to get there to open up with the 50s, and they tried to keep us down on the ground. Of course, once we saw what it was, we were busy trying to get out, and we got hit too much, and we lost a lot of hydraulic lines and everything. Fuel was all over the place, and we jumped. We were here, and he could get it up just well enough, and he'd go about 200 yards and drop back down again. And then he'd hop back up again and go another 200 yards. We got around the other side. So it was nothing like my first encounter getting shot
Yeah.
down. But
how high would you say you were up?
we probably go 100 feet in the air, and then he'd come back down again. He didn't have any power.
Well, I meant for like the first time. First time you got shot down?
Oh, we were flying along about 2,000 feet, I think, 2 or 3,000 feet. So, and they got lucky. They was probably a little patrol going on, and they were pot shotting, and they hit that hydraulic line. We had vests, we had thick armored vests, but we stood on them. We sat on them, because you were going to get shot from the bottom usually, not forward. If I had my vest on, I couldn't lean out the window with my machine gun, so I stood on it, because that's where we get holes every now and then. And
Yeah, that's smart.
mhm. You got smart. You got smart.
What do you think the main purpose of the war was?
Kill communists. Stop the advancement of communism. That's what my purpose was. Communism and socialism are not good things.
Yeah.
And do whatever you can to stop it. And if you don't want to stop it, you're on their side. That's my way I think.
I heard something about they weren't trying to join the system or something like a banking system or something like that.
Central banking system.
Oh, I don't know. That's all political bullshit. I never knew anything about it. The average guy wouldn't understand it if they explained it to him, you know.
Yeah.
And that's all. But that's going to go on, wartime, peacetime. You know, I'll bet someone made a fortune whenever they quit making fucking pennies. You know, I mean that's the way it is. They, you know, and so well,
Were there any other, I guess, cool stories you could say about Vietnam or anything that would happen? Because I know a lot of people were doing a bunch of experimenting with drugs out there, or like.
yeah, a lot of that was more of an infantry issue, and we had one guy that was a drug addict.
Yeah.
He was a hydraulic repairman, and
What was his drug of choice?
heroin.
Oh wow, that's probably not good.
Yeah, nice guy, but he was a drug addict. You know, and he ended up being taken off one day. You know, but he was in the infantry. The big deal was that they'd get what they could. You know, they'd get some speed. Some guys would shoot up. Most of the guys were smoking weed because it was fucking there.
Really?
Yeah, it's all over the place. You could go out and get 100-pound sack if you wanted to. You get time to go do it. You know, and so that's what it was there then. You know.
Think it was any good?
I don't know. I never did smoke any of it. I wanted control of
Yeah,
what I
well,
was
yeah,
doing.
that makes sense.
I never even drank very much. And a lot of guys got drunk every night too. I never did that. I wanted total control of myself. You know, I have a few drinks and beers and stuff like that, but I never lost control. I wanted every advantage I could get. So anyway, but there was incidents that took place that stick out in your mind uh, that happened that just I'm not a big one on telling war stories,
Yeah.
but um, the one time we medevaced a Vietnamese village. We didn't do that often. There was usually a different bunch of guys that flew for the Army.
Y'all were saving the civilians, right? And
Yeah, we went in after the Viet Cong. That's the civilian version of the Communist Party that operated in Vietnam. Then they had their South Vietnamese Communist Party, and then they had the regular army from North Vietnam that come in. These were the civilian Viet Cong. Viet Cong were renegades as far as I could see. They had the same goal. They were terrorists, and they'd come in and terrorize a village because they we gave him aid one time or some reason, and they'd go in and terrorize it. And what they had done in this little village, I remember it had a little pond, and the huts were around it, where they lived. And we landed on this side of the pond. Over here was a clearing. The rest of it had jungle and stuff around it. And when we got there, we knew we were going to pick up civilian wounded. And so there was a couple of them lined up out there. But I could see the village part because it was just the other side of the pond. The pond was maybe 30, 40 yards wide. And the disruption was, everything was tore up. But I could see something hanging from these palm trees, these trees. And I asked the pilot, I said, "What's that?" you know, because you could see it was. And I found out later that it was the village chief that they had hung upside down and cut him in half with a machete.
Oh my God. From his legs, like in the half.
Cut him in half. So each half was hanging. Wasn't there's still a rope around his ankles, but he was cut in half. They got the women and they just belly cut them, just to make pain for them.
Yeah.
We got one of them in, and it was the worst smell that I'd ever smelled in my life. And I was throwing up out the window. I couldn't stand it. And they brought her in. They had a towel or a sheet or something wrapped around her, holding her in her intestines in. And we got her in the helicopter, and the corpsman and crew chief were assisting her. But I remember that smell. It almost makes me sick to smell it, think about it today. It was an intestines had been cut,
Yeah, that's fucking.
and their diet is different than ours, let's say.
Yeah.
You know, and it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. So
Oh God. Yeah, that was probably pretty crazy. And
there's 1,000 stories, but I just can't go through all of them.
yeah. So about the was there like there were banks over there and there were a lot of stuff going on and
There was banks, I believe, yeah. Um,
was it ever an order to go and take the stuff out of the banks or was it
oh no,
just
I know what you're talking about there. We were pulling medevac during oh, I'll never forget the name. Um, the Tet Offensive of 1968. It was a movement by the North to disrupt the entire South Vietnam. They had coordinated efforts going on the whole South Vietnam. And Hue City, which was a northern capital, was had the citadel, a big religious place, and but they were the North Vietnamese regular army was in Hue City, and so was the Marine Corps and the Army at that time, and they were all had firefights going on, all those looking for each other. We were pulling medevac out of town, and a guy comes to the helicopter. We were waiting for a guy, and a guy gets in the helicopter, and he's got two duffels, two packs on him. And he jumps up in the bird. He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, we're going to probably go down and end up in Da Nang." And he says, "Can you take me?" I said, "Sure, get back over in this corner. You'll be out of the way. And just don't say anything, and I think we can get you out of here." So he did, and we did. No one even knew he was in there, because we had some other wounded, and we were taking some other stuff out. So anyway, and he's right next to my seat where I could finally sit down. And I sat down, and I said, "Who are you?" And he gave me a name, I don't remember. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, I got to get down to Da Nang and see if I can get a ride out of town, out of the country. And I said, "What are you doing that for?" He says, "You open one of the packs up just a little bit so I could see what was in it." And he said, "Those are gold sheets." He he said, "I was at the Citadel in Hue City when they blew the doors to the bank, the wall of the bank out." He said, "I was in there with Viet Cong, Vietnam regulars, and some army guys, some other army guys." He said, there was piles of gold in there, and we were getting all we could. But he had two backpacks full of them. But it was gold sheets that were about this big, and probably about a 16th of an inch thick. Two packs full of them. It must have weighed 200 pounds.
yeah.
And he said, "I'm just trying to get out of town with them."
Yeah.
I said,
Left
"Well,
town, a rich man.
yeah." I said,
He's a multi-millionaire.
Yeah, yeah. He got it out.
Yeah, someone if anybody's seen that,
Yeah, you
he,
know,
he
I could have just killed him on the spot and took it, you
yeah.
know. So, uh,
He didn't give you a sheet for the ride, or
nah, it was really would have been too much trouble. I mean, it was because it's packed in there and his straps are down on it and everything. I just said, "Good luck, bub." You know. He said, "Which way is Denang?" We just flew over it right over there. You know, we landed him on the Perfume River. And, I said, "This is where you need to get out. You don't need to go to my base. You get across that river. You can catch a ride on one of these barges here that's going back and forth, one of the shuttles." Said they don't ask anybody anything. And I had a buddy of mine from Heron, Illinois, that was in the Navy there, and he was running the supply out of that pier. And Leon Followell was his name. Lived right down the street from my grandmother, and a good guy. Leon's a good guy. He's still we both made it, and we chummed around a little bit when I got back, and he's always a good guy. His brother's real active on the internet and stuff. Robert Followell. So, but yeah, yeah, he was that guy. That's there was another fellow, a friend of mine's father, who said something similar to that probably happened. It had happened. Australia had been occupied by the Japanese, a certain part of it at one time, World War II, and Paul Scolari, I think was his name, is a girl friends of mine's father. He was in the army down there, and he said that he come across 2 bars of gold when they were going through this whatever it was, I don't know. And he said he got these 2 bars of gold. He said they were both really heavy, probably weighed 30, 40 pounds apiece. And he buried them out on the beach by some trees. And he said, I said, "How are you ever going to find them?" He said, "I have no idea. I just knew I wasn't going to turn them in." Well, then I said, "Did you ever go back try to find them?" He said, "No, never did. Couldn't." He said that your movements are controlled pretty much when you're going to an area like that.
Should call him and see where it's
Yeah,
at.
I was in Australia, but he didn't even know where he was. You know, he was in some town up north of Sydney and everything. Kind of strange. But anyway, yeah, things like that happen in war, you know, and it just gets written off. It's like the guys that were in Iraq. They had rooms full of money that they'd made on oil deals and drug deals and everything. And when we went into them, the guys said it was just impossible to imagine that there was just $100 bills in bales that were, you know, and you know the guys, someone stole as much of it as they could, you know, but you just wasn't usually one of you guys that got it, you know. So yeah,
Yeah, what happened? What would be like a penalty, or what would be something that would happen to you if you got caught with something like that?
I don't know. They'd find as many things as they could for you, of course, if they caught you with it. I don't know. I don't know what is it. They'd make you they'd try to make you account for it, and if you couldn't say I just found it, then it's not yours, so you're not supposed to take it. They'd get you on theft probably, but they'd find more. Unless they were taking it from you to go do something with it themselves, then there would
Yeah,
nothing would happen to you, you know. Which I think that probably happened more than anything, you know.
commanding officer would be like, "Oh wow, look
Yeah,
at this."
his little group would divvy it up. There'd be a little bit left that they'd have to turn in, but most of them would steal it. From there, you could mail things. You know, when I was in Vietnam, I was thinking right off the bat to be able to mail some.
Okay.
Going to be able to mail some stuff home, but they're checking for drugs more than anything. They didn't give a shit if you had a pistol or anything. They were checking for drugs because the guys were getting the marijuana and sending it back. There was no very few checks on anything coming in. There was guys. one of the fellows that I come across, he was a private in a different company. He was, I don't know, or he was there at Marble Mountain, another location, and his brother was sending him counterfeit bills to spend in Vietnam, and but I mean, you could look at one if they handed you $100 bill, one of them, that you couldn't do much with 100 because it's too big a bill. You could take tens and fives and twenties and be able to do with something with them. If you give these guys 100, these Vietnamese, they don't see that much money in their lifetime, you know. So, but you give them counterfeit fives and tens and twenties. You could tell they look like Monopoly money, the ones this guy was getting, and but they had the semblance to American money, and he was trading them for things that he wanted, and he wanted to get greenbacks, or he could get military payment certificates, MPCs. That's where the government printed their own money for the troops to spend. Uh, that looked like real monopoly money. This little a dime was about this big square, and a $20 bill was about that big, you know. And but they wanted that MPC. That was just like greenback, and what they wanted to end up with was greenback. So these were the counterfeits were the semblance of the greenback dollar, the American dollar. That was gold, you know. And
Then you could exchange it for real money.
yeah, we'd exchange it for military payment certificate, which is what they had. They had MPC. They get it from whoever they were hijacking off at the time, you know, the barbers and the whores and whoever else had the money. They'd trade them back. So
Were there a bunch of whorehouses and stuff like that over there?
no, not really. The bars acted like them.
Harold Fun.
Well,
Some of my husband's there.
How many did you visit?
you saw all you had time for, you know. I mean, so,
I always pictured there'd be like a line out at a tent and there's just a chick in there.
well, there's the girls worked the streets and they had a little hooch. It was, you know, and but there was no, there was massage parlors sometimes. They were organized on the base, so that meant that the officers were getting a cut of it.
Ah, okay.
It's just like no difference here than it is there. I mean, everything was the same. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, they were over there. There's a lot of them all over. They were all over. Any war, any place you put a whole bunch of people, a bunch of men, soldiers, Marines, the girls are going to come out.
That's how it goes.
You know,
Is there anything you wanted to ask, Nick?
Um,
Speak up to.
what was your worst day? Like the worst thing you've seen?
wow, that's hard to say.
Is all bad? All
Well,
good?
there's bad experiences, and my worst day though, God, that would have to be the day I got wounded, the first day, I think, because I was new. You know,
Setting the stage.
I still smelled like the States, you know, and and for that rocket to hit the corner of my hooch was pretty traumatic in itself. And then to get wounded and not able to get into the bunker, I didn't know how long this thing was going to last. By the time I got down, it had stopped. They probably set off 30, 40 rockets. They can set them off on time, you know, and they're nowhere near when they blast off, and they lob them into the areas they're going for, you know. So, but that probably would have been my most confusing day. But you get, you know, you have when you're in a situation like that, there's moments of terror that's just absolutely unimaginable, scared the shit out of you, and but they go away. You know, that's just if you don't get killed or hit, good. You know, and I never did get killed or hit. Obviously, got hit, but nothing, not much. And experience being wounded was minimal. Like I said, I lead a charmed life, always have. Um,
How many times did you see white phosphorus get dropped?
just once, saw it drop at another location over, and we were working the same area. And
Is it visible or?
oh God, yes, it looks like white clouds. It looks like white smoke.
Like a big nuke cloud, or
No, it's scattered. It looked like a big flower, like a fireworks display. What
Yeah.
it looked like. And but it's coming up from the ground because that's where probably a white phosphorus mortar round or artillery round or something. But it puts out a plume, and all those little pieces of it. You can see the little tails all over the place. And but if they, I never saw a guy with it, but I heard if you got it on you, it burned until it got through you. If you got some on your arm, if you could stand it, because it's burning a hole through your arm,
Oh my God.
and then and it would do it until it dropped out the other side. So pretty bad stuff.
Is it an actual powder or what?
Now when it started, it was, probably pellets. I would imagine it was.
So it's touches your skin, it literally burns all the way through your.
Yeah.
Hey,
You probably turn it upside down and see if you can't get it to quit. I don't know what you do, because water won't put it out.
really?
Yeah. You'd have to smother it out. So I guess if you packed it in something,
What was like the best time there? Was there any good times?
yeah, we had when you're with a bunch of guys, anytime. And I can't. I'm trying to think offhand. I had, I remember having when we'd have a party or something, and uh, when Fred had the hooch over from me, my best buddy over there. He and I went to Sydney, Australia together, and he came after he got out of the Marine Corps and came and lived with me for a year. And Fred and I had some good times, and but it usually involved having some drinks and you know
find the Vietnam women.
find it. Well, if you're getting very many drinks, you're in a bar already, and that's where the girls would hang out. And but it was best time was I can't put my finger on it, but there was good times. You get some good stories going and stuff. Someone made it, you hear about it and you're glad about it. The one guy we heard about, we took 50 caliber fire once coming in. This is in Myburton, and we got out of there as soon as we could. I don't know if I stopped him or not, but I shot at him. And when we were taking off, I was still shooting at him, so I don't guess I killed him. But the crew chief, and we had got hit hard. We had fucking holes this big around all over in the bird, and a lot of the guys, everybody in the bird but me got hit that day. And the crew chief had been hit in the groin,
Oh no.
and we found out when he got back that it blew one of his balls off. So that's one of the funny times there. He was going through pain to hell, It took off a part of his thigh, and because the 50 caliber's got a high velocity, it's a bullet this big going through you, and it sucks stuff out, and it just pulled it right out. So one ball.
That's what y'all call him the rest of the time.
Yeah, he was. I wasn't there too much longer. He came back to finish his tour. You had so many week tours you had to finish, and he got taken care of and sent back, and and I left right after he got back. Uh-huh. Worst guy I ever saw on a medevac would be a guy. What I was thinking, they'd been hit by something, and the concussion he got blown into a tree, and he was acting just like Gigi in there. It hurt his back, and anytime they'd move him, he'd scream. because we don't have a bed that we're operating in and where we're helping him go along. They're still in a firefight, and they're trying to get him to the helicopter to get him out. And all we got's those old metal stretchers, and we had to get him on one of them, get him out of the situation he was in, get him over to the bird, and then get him loaded up and in. And he was screaming as hard as you could fucking scream all the time he was doing it because it hurt. He broke his back. And I don't never knew how bad it was or anything like that, but we knew what it was. Didn't get wounded, but he got blown into that tree, and it broke his back whenever he hit it. Something did it, and we were trying to take his gear off of him, and he was just screaming. God damn! I mean, you didn't want to do it because he was screaming all the time, trying to get his flak jacket off and stuff, and it was just
Terrible.
yeah. It was like going in and getting Gigi and trying to drag her out down the hall and get her on a stretcher in here, and then load her up, put her in a bus. Just imagine what it would take to do that, Yeah, yeah. So
What going towards the end, what what happened? Like, did you just leave, or was it, or
well, we had what we called R&R, Russian relaxation, that was taking you all out of Vietnam for a week and dropping you somewhere you wanted to go. Um, um, if you had requested R&R and you pulled Hawaii and you weren't married, you always gave your Hawaiian trip up so the guy could go see his wife, and then they give you a different one when it comes up. So I gave up Hawaii. I could have gone and met my family there again. They suggested it, and I didn't hear about it. And so I gave up my Hawaii trip and went to Sydney, Australia. And
Destination there?
Fred, that's a nice place. I like Sydney a lot. It was like America 30 years earlier, and it's just it's a little more quaint. Uh, I liked it a lot. It's a good. You couldn't buy a drink. You go into a bar, the minute they knew you were a Yank, put your wallet up because they're buying. And we was in one place. We was at a restaurant, and as the girl was seating us, she was talking to us, and she's Australian, and of course we were two Yanks, and we never made it to our table. The guy saw us and heard us talking and said, "Come over here and sit down, and have a drink." So he had his whole family there, and Fred and I went over and started talking to him, and it was a thing of honor to be able to entertain a Yank, And he bought us our drinks. He bought our dinner that night. He had us come to his country club the next day, and he was entertaining us. We were his American friends. But you got treated like royalty. That would be one of the better times that I had during that tour, And yeah, but a lot of the guys that go to Bangkok, that's whorehouse city.
who the lady boys are?
Yeah, they got lady boys there too. Yeah, yeah,
That's what Nick wanted to go for.
yeah. So, but yeah, it's all
Well,
part of my charmed life tour, I think.
we got an hour and 40 minutes, Pop. Almost. Hour and 38 minutes.
Wow. Well,
So,
you basically covered Vietnam.
for the most part, I'm pretty sure there's some other things that
Yeah,
probably we'll ask later.
we'll do it
later
on the next one.
Yep.
All right.
Well, Pop,
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
thank you all for watching. And comment below if there's anything that we missed. And if there's any questions y'all want to ask, yeah, just comment. Thank you. Have a nice day.
How many was watching? Do you have any idea?